Welcome everybody to our Solar and Energy Efficiency Workgroup meeting for April 2021. We are going to have a presentation from Karen Apple, who is with the City of Phoenix. She is the Electric Vehicle Program Manager, and I'd venture to say that she's probably the only electric vehicle program manager for cities in Arizona. So it's great to have her. And she's going to be discussing EV marketing strategies, some adoption challenges and opportunities, and the current and future plans for the City of Phoenix's EV program. And so we're really excited to actually have her share her words of wisdom, because she's really got her pulse on what's happening in EVs and infrastructure deployment, and working closely with all of the utilities and that. So we're very excited. Karen has over a decade of experience and knowledge in public policy issues and project management related to transportation and the environment. I really enjoy talking to Karen, because every time I talk to her, I learn something new and realize how much I don't know about electric vehicles. So I'm sure you'll kind of come away with a wealth of information. And she has said that she wants to serve as a resource for everybody. So definitely take advantage of her wealth of knowledge. She joined the City of Phoenix Office of Sustainability as the Electric Vehicle Program Manager in March 2020. And she manages the planning and program developments of projects that support the accelerated adoption of plug-in electric vehicles. And I'm sure she'll talk a lot about that. Before joining that department, she was served as project manager and NEPA planner for the City of Phoenix Aviation Department since 2005. She holds a Master's of Environmental Planning from ASU, go Devils, and then a Bachelor's of Science in Public Policy Transportation from Indiana University's School of Public and Environmental Affairs. So with that, I want to welcome Karen. And it's great to have you. I know we all have a lot of burning questions around electric vehicles. So without further ado, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I will let you get started. As for questions, feel free to add your questions in the chat. I think for the most part, she's got her presentation kind of segmented. So we might be able to take a couple of questions at the end of each segment and then move on. Otherwise, we can certainly address them at the end, and she might have the innate capability of monitoring those questions as she's speaking and might be able to work in a few in the middle. So without further ado, welcome, Karen. Let me know if you need any support during your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Thanks for that kind introduction. And wow, you make me sound like I know what I'm talking about today. So yeah, as Anne said, I've been with the city for about 15 years, but in this role for a little over a year. So I got selected for this position back in March of 2020, sat in my downtown City Hall seat for about 2 weeks, and then got what I like to call put on house arrest or telework status. So I learned a lot through a lot of webinars, and certainly through quite a few folks on this phone call, getting learned up in this space. So I can tell that I've come a long way in a year. I still have a lot of ways to go, but I've learned a little bit in my year tenure with the city in this role. So as Anne said, I'm going to go through 3 different segments of EVs. We're going to talk a little bit about EV community survey and results that Anne and I sent out last September. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the programs and policies and processes that the City of Phoenix has in place for EV adoption. And then I'm going to round it out with lessons learned and best practices. And I'm sure a few of you have got some of those as well. So let me get started on the first information. It's our community survey and results. So let me give you an overview. Mayor Gallego came to us last year and said that she was appointed as the MAG transportation chairperson. And she came to our group and said, if there was anything that she would want to put in front of MAG regarding EVs, what would it be? And to be considered for the Prop 400 extension, which Prop 400 extension is the use of a 0.5-cent sales tax for transportation projects. So we put on our thinking caps, and what I struggle with at the city, as well as I think other municipalities are struggling with, and Danae alluded to this, is the EV siting process. Where do you cite, I'm sorry, the EV charging siting study. So we told the mayor that we would like to see MAG support an EV charging station regional siting study. And she said, okay, that sounds great. But before I put that on the table for the MAG member agencies, how about we get an understanding of the MAG members, if they're even supportive of EVs? Where do they stand on EVs? Do they have them in their fleet? Do they have chargers? So Ann and I put together a really short survey that asked those questions. So the purpose of the survey was to solicit input from the 33 MAG member agencies on their EV fleet adoptions and charger installations, and to identify their support for a regional EV program. And also demonstrate support, again, for this regional EV programs and potential projects to be included in the Prop 400 extension. So just a couple survey logistics. We administered the survey from September 14 through 25. We sent it to all 33 member agencies, and Anna and I were really surprised that we had such a good return rate. We got 30 of 33 responses from the cities, towns, counties, and tribal governments that make up the MAG member cities or agencies. So again, the survey questions that we asked them were really simple. 4 questions: the number of battery electrics and plug-in hybrids in your fleet, how many EV installations are on your public properties, and that would be for fleet, workplace, and public. Would you provide support for regional EV charging infrastructure? Do you want to see that? Yes or no? And then we ask for their contact information. So the survey results came back, and we got 29 out of 30 that were interested in participating and supporting the MAG regionally, the EV programs. 11 of the 30 respondents have battery electrics or plug-ins in their fleet. 20 of 30s of the respondents have charging installed either for public, fleet, or workplace. And in the comment section, several members commented that they have funding and budget for battery electrics in 2021. So the key message and the takeaway from this survey was that our MAG member agencies are committed to increasing adoption of battery electrics and plug-ins and installing EV charging stations. And they understand this transition is critical to improving our air quality in the region. And it also showed that a lot of these cities are starting down the EV road and EV charging road. So we passed this on to Mayor Gallego. I don't know that she has shared it yet with the MAG team for the Prop 400 extension, but we know it's on her agenda to do so. So we were really excited about the results of this survey. And Ann and I are talking about potentially doing this survey once a year and getting the trending. And we already have a baseline now, so we could keep doing this survey and get a trend line. And if anybody's interested in seeing the results of this survey, I think Ann can post them on the website, or we can email them out to you. She can include it in an email. So I will take some questions on this survey now. If anybody's got any questions, just unmute yourself. If not, I'll just move on.
Yeah, and I am happy to, Karen, I'm happy to include the survey's results in the follow-up.
Okay. So again, really happy with the results, and those have been passed on, and we hope that we get some Prop 400 extension money to help with this EV charging siting study from a regional perspective.
Karen, before you go on, just one question.
Yeah.
So it strikes me that as we're thinking about regionally how to work on this, that there's probably a typology of cities, right? We have cities that already have infrastructure. We have cities that are working on their plans. We have cities that have infrastructure but aren't doing any planning. We have cities that have it in their budget but don't have anything yet but are planning on having something soon. And then we have cities that it's just not on their radar quite yet and they need some additional capacity building. Do you see the survey results as kind of being a base of data from which we can kind of start to target how we, as Sustainable Cities Network, how we support the different cities depending where they're at in the process?
Absolutely. And that's a good point, Braden. Everybody's at a different chapter in this book, but we all know that they're on the same mission. So I do see the Sustainability Cities Network, and I think Anne's going to mention something later on about an EV subcommittee. I do see the opportunity for lessons learned and information and resource sharing to be offered to those cities that haven't even started down this road, or that are in junior high, some are in high school, some are working towards the college level on this. So I absolutely do. And it kind of goes to the same concern that there's different tiers and marketing segments in our audiences as well. Some people don't even know what an EV is. Some people already own an EV. Some people have already owned 3 EVs. So we have to market those folks differently. So the same goes with cities. We have to educate them differently, provide different resources and information. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think as long as we totally understand everyone's somewhere in this process, and that as we mature our work and potentially even consider having our own subcommittee, that we're trying to make sure that everyone has their needs met as different cities, knowing full well that we're all in different places and that's okay. But we're hoping that that we're developing tools and resources that help every city along, no matter where they are in the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Anne said, I really look forward to being the central repository of information, or being one of the central repositories to get this information out, because I don't want to work on this issue in a silo. We're all in this together, and we've got to move forward together. So I know that City of Phoenix has its own goals, but overall the mission is to improve our air quality and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and get more EVs and chargers installed and EVs in the fleet. So absolutely. And I'm looking to take on that role to help be the conduit to help those cities that don't have resources and have a dedicated staffer to EVs. So absolutely. The next section, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we at the City of Phoenix have been doing to advance EV adoption and EV installs in the city. And I'll give you kind of our overall mission and goals and program processes. But first, we had a meeting with SRP not too long ago, and I thought this was some good slides to share because it just helped make me more aware of the 5 A's of the market penetration strategies. So when we are thinking about how we address our community and our staff and employees and fleets, we need to be thinking about awareness. Is our public aware of EVs? Why should they care? And do consumers even know about our EVs? And as I just mentioned, people are on different information levels with EVs. And that's part of our jobs, is getting more education and awareness out into the public, even our own staffs and employees and management, educated up on the EVs issues. The next one is acceptability. Have our consumers bought into the benefits and technology and or approve or meet or exceed our expectations? Again, some have, some haven't. And again, that's where education and outreach helps with this acceptability market penetration. Next one is affordability. Do our consumers have the purchasing power? And as most of us know on this call, we've got some disadvantaged and low income neighborhoods that may not have the purchasing power. So what kind of programs and policies and procedures can we put in place to help those kinds of communities to make these EVs more affordable? Availability. Are vehicles at the dealers and our model options available? Well, it's getting better all the time, but you know, we're not a ZEV state, and ZEV state, zero emission vehicle states. We are not one. California is one, and they get the availability of more models and more options than we do in this state. However, I did notice just the other day that Kia Niro used to not be available new in our region, but I've seen them on Auto Trader as new and available at the dealers. So there's hope that we're getting more options every day. And if you are plugged into the news at all, we're getting more models, you know, more pickup models are coming, more crossover models, more sedans. So our only hope is that the dealers will start to get more of these. And what I've been told is they need to see more demand. So I know that SRP and APS are both working on dealer outreach programs. So we'll definitely be plugged into those opportunities. And the last A stands for accessibility, the ease of acquisition and the use of vehicles and chargers. You know, sometimes we're frightened by new technology, so we have to find a way to make the acquisition and the transition to the EVs a more smooth transition, and get more information on how do you charge these vehicles? Where are the chargers? So we know they're out there, but the majority of the public doesn't know where they're at. So that's another opportunity in our education and outreach, is to make the infrastructure more accessible. So a little bit of understanding on the EV market transformation and adoption curve. So if you can see the star, that's where we're at now in this market adoption curve. We're on just past early adoption, moving into mass adoption. But the more, but we can steepen this curve, the orangey magenta looking line, with the more direct subsidies, the more tax credits, the more vehicle tax exemptions, the more non-monetary incentives, such as use of the HOV lane and emissions exemptions. And of course, the more installations of charging stations will steepen that adoption curve. And then we can move that star up that curve. So I know SRP and APS are doing a great job with providing rebates and incentives. And we cities can give special treatment to our own EV owners and our staffs. We can put more charging stations in our own municipal buildings. And of course, just add more charging stations for the public and workplace and fleet use. So what's interesting is the late adoption and the maturity in the regulation. This is where they're called the late laggers or the late adopters, where they're not going to adopt an EV until they absolutely have to and are mandated by the government or regulation, or they're imposed carbon taxes. So we certainly want to get more adopters on the front end of this curve than have to mandate people to buy EVs. So again, I just thought this was an interesting market transformation and adoption curve, and I wanted to share that with you folks. So again, we the city are going to be looking for ways to grow this curve and steepen it. So a little overview on where the city is in terms of the climate action plan framework. So the city has a framework put together on our climate action plan. We've solicited public input. I believe we've received all that input, and we are reviewing it. And right now the framework has a net zero greenhouse gas emission goal by 2050 to be net zero. We certainly want to be the leading by example to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality and improve sustainability, affordability, and livability in Phoenix. And we want to ultimately remove barriers to EV adoption, which one is to install more charging stations. So what we don't have put together right now are our direct, detailed EV goals. We are working on those, and we need to work with our city departments to make sure they're on board with our city goals. Because what we don't want to do is put this climate action plan together in a vacuum. So we want to make sure that our city departments are on board with budgets, and we've got things in place and policies and procedures in place that we can achieve our EV goals. So it could be a goal such as we're going to add 100 EVs in the fleet by 2025, 2030. So we just have to look at the data and get those put together. So we're in process, but right now we just have the overarching goal to remove the barriers to EV adoption. And I'll go through later in this presentation about how we're trying to achieve that now. One of the things that I struggle with is getting good data from ADOT or EPRI or whomever I can get it from, because I really need to understand how many EVs are in the city of Phoenix as a whole. I know how many I have in fleet. This is the city as a whole. And then how many are projected to come into our municipality by 2025 and how many by 2030. So I took some data from EPRI. 2019 was actual data, and then I used a growth rate of 5.15. And I projected out the EVs that should show up in the city of Phoenix. By 2025, we should have 34,000 EVs, and by 2030, we should have over 290,000 EVs, which is great and good, but it scares me also because I've got a lot of EV charging stations that I need to get installed to be able to accommodate those EV numbers that are coming. So I took a look at some data from the Department of Energy, the Alternative Fuels Data Center, based it on my growth rates and my projections, and I came up with how many charging stations I'm going to need by 2025 and 2030. And I can already see that I'm at a gap. So it says at workplace, I need 820, and that's not just City of Phoenix workplace, that's workplace all over the city. And then public chargers, I have 406, and I need to get to over 4,000 by 2030. That's a lot. Again, that's not just City of Phoenix's obligation, that's the city as a whole. And then DC fast chargers, we have a deficit there too. So we've got a lot of gap to close. And I'm hoping that when we get federal money provided to us from this American Jobs Plan, that we'll be able to really move the needle and make a difference on EV charging installations, and also get more EVs in our fleet, because that money will be dedicated for EVs as vehicle purchases as well as charging installations. So when I first got into the seat as the EV program manager, I had to quickly get up to speed on what are my missions and my goals personally moving this program along. And so I looked at, I kind of liken it to, I have four pillars and one common thread that runs through our program. The first one is fleet, getting more EVs transitioned into our fleet. So collaborating with my city departments to educate them on the benefits and the cost, and to transition the city's light duty sedan fleets to EVs. First off, we're going to start with sedans. Then we can morph into pickup trucks and heavy duty, medium and heavy duty kinds of electric vehicles, but let's get a handle on our light duty sedan fleets. And this also goes to EV adoption in the public. So it's not just in the fleet, it's coming up with programs and policies to get the public more aware and get them adopting more EVs. The second bucket, or the second pillar, is EV charging infrastructure. So again, working towards increasing installations and availability of public workplace, employee, and fleet charging infrastructure. The third pillar is EV equity, because it's really important that we build EV equity into our policies and programs. And this is to engage the disadvantaged and underserved communities to provide programs and policies to increase EV adoption. And one of the things I'm learning in some of the webinars I'm listening to is it's really important that we go meet with these folks and we understand what their needs are. because it may not be an EV vehicle, it may not be a car, it might not be a light duty sedan. It could be a car share. It could be an electric bicycle. It could be, again, vouchers for a ride share, again, the car share. So we have to do some kind of needs assessment and reach out to our disadvantaged communities to understand what their needs are and how we can best serve them to provide them opportunities in the space. The next pillar is building codes. So we at the city are, we do not have EV ready building codes. We are looking into those. We're collaborating with our single family, multifamily, and commercial building organizations, our own planning department, to implement EV ready building codes. I was just on a phone call today with one of our electrical code reviewers, and what I'm finding is we've got to do a better job of being a gatekeeper when SRP, APS, a private entity submits for a permit through our portal, because what I'm finding is they're submitting the information through one door when it should be going through another door, a quicker, way quicker door. And I use door as the portal. I was working with APS and they've got 4 permits requests that are being held up when they shouldn't have even been going down that road. They should have been going on this different road, and they could have gotten an over-the-counter review and approval in a day. And they've had permits in the queue for months, or some kind of information in the queue that they haven't gotten to. So we've got to do a better job of streamlining the permitting process and educating our own staff on how we can get streamlined processes so we can turn these permits for EV chargers quicker. Because even though they're not on public property, any charger that gets installed in the city of Phoenix just helps out the city's mission of putting more charging stations out there. So that's something that we're working on. And again, the common thread that runs through all of these pillars is education and awareness programs. What we like to call butts in seats. So doing more EV drive-in rides, doing more webinars, doing more in-person events, getting more information and education out there so that we get people educated on what these EVs are, what they're not, dispel their myths and fears. And again, it really starts with getting folks in the cars and doing drive-in rides. And we hope to be doing more of those when some of the COVID restrictions lift. So let me go through a little bit about where some of the projects that are in process and some projects that are planned. Again, focusing on those pillars and buckets that I just mentioned. So right now, in terms of fleet in process, we're increasing our EV fleet transitions. We are starting to educate our departments, working with our departments to get more EVs in the fleet. I just got told right now we have 8 EVs. We have 6 light duty sedans and 2 electric motorcycles. I just got told by police we're getting 2 more electric motorcycles. So we'll bring it up to a total of 10 electric vehicles in our fleet. And then something else that we're working on is we want to increase the use of the Climate Mayor's Purchasing Collaborative Program. And what that is cities are eligible to join, and I don't think you even have to be a member to join, but it's a collaborative, and the collaborative has gotten reduced prices for light duty sedans, charging equipment, and they also have some electric school buses and a few other pieces of equipment that if you go through this collaborative purchasing program, again, you get discounted pricing. Along with that is they have different financing companies that you can use, where it makes leasing a very affordable option to get EVs into your fleet at a lower upfront purchase price by the leasing option. And you can also take advantage of the federal tax credits through the leasing program, where as a municipality, if you purchase outright, you can't take advantage of the federal tax credit. So leasing is a very attractive option to getting more fleet more EVs in your fleet. We're trying to educate the City of Phoenix finance team. They don't really take a liking to leasing vehicles, so we just keep plugging away and educating them and trying to get them to let leasing be a viable option for us. Because for $5,000 a year, I could get one EV in my fleet under the leasing option. In terms of what's planned for the fleet, certainly on my radar is develop a green sustainable fleets plan, so that we've got a plan in place on going through what fleet needs to be transitioned, working with those departments, putting a plan together, a strategic plan to having a methodology to our transition of the fleet. Next category that we're working on is the charging infrastructure. And right now we're working with APS as part of their Take Charge AZ program. We are getting 4 dual port chargers. We are getting 4 dual port chargers in our Adams Street garage for employee use. It's 2 dual ports, so it's 4 ports. 2 dual ports, 4 ports in our Adams Street garage for employees. We're also getting 4 dual port, or 8 total ports in our 305 West Washington Street garage, and those will be for fleet. So again, right now I've got 5 fleet in the 305. So they'll already almost be filling up our charging stations from APS once they get installed. Working with the SRP rebate program. So trying to take advantage of that. That's a really great opportunity to get more charging stations in by the rebate money they're offering. And we have an existing contract with Blink, and we've got 43 single port charging stations, level 2 charging stations that are Blink. Blink has agreed to upgrade all 43 units. So we're last week and this week, we're out in the field upgrading those Blink units to the new technology. I like to call them the Q2000s, but I think they're the IQ200s. So a better amenity for our users. And then again, planned is to develop our city siting study. If I can't get a regional study, then I'm going to have to go ahead and do our own city siting study. Education and outreach in process. We are certainly partnering with our APS and SRP service providers and other community groups to do drive-in rides and support their education and outreach, as well as our own. I'm also in the process of developing an education and outreach plan, which will include some EV equity programs and plans and projects. The planned things for education and outreach, we certainly want to participate in the National Drive Electric Weeks, which happens, I think, in September. We're looking at developing an employee and resident e-bike pilot program. And overall, I want to develop the EV roadmap, I'm planning that the siting study and the sustainable green fleets plan will be then chapters and not standalones, but they will be included chapters in the EV roadmap. And again, with building codes, again, we're still coordinating with our single family, multifamily home builders and associations to understand their concerns for EV ready building codes. Again, we've gotten a bit of pushback from our single family, multifamily building associations as they don't want to add any more cost to a home builder, new construction. I struggle with that because I'm being told that to wire a house for a level 2 charger, the cost may be $500 on a new build. And I just don't understand why we can't roll that into the overall purchase price of a house. So, but I've also heard that some home builders are voluntarily installing their level 2 ports in the garages. So that's really good news. And again, this is a huge goal for the city that we want to get accomplished to get EV ready building codes. And then planned is, again, to get these building codes implemented. So in processes and plan, it's kind of the same. We're working hard to work with our building partners to get this done, to come across the line. So when we met with SRP, they said, you know, what could be done from, what can we all be doing and regionally to really advance the collective cumulative goal here? And we said, here were some of the things that Phoenix said we'd like to see, or some ideas that we think could really advance from a regional perspective. You know, APS put together their statewide electrification plan, and it has goals in it, and it's great, and it's a really great plan. But what we thought would be helpful is if we could downscale to the regional and local municipality level, because we're all looking for data and the information behind what's coming, the EV baseline, what the projections are for our own municipal levels. So it's great to have it at the cumulative state level, but if we could pare that down to our own levels, that would be very helpful. The next bucket that we looked at is data access, outreach, and education. I know that some of our utilities get some EPRI data, which is EV stats and data for state, regions, and cities. And that would be helpful if they could pass that along or make it available to all of us cities to have and for our use, so that we could all be singing off the same sheet of music in terms of the EV data that's out there. Again, continued incentives for EVs and charging stations, having a central repository for marketing materials, images, and maps. So, you know, let's not recreate the wheel. We're all working towards the same mission. So if we had a repository of images and photos and maps and marketing materials, then it would save us some money and time if this was put together already and in a central location. Another thing we thought was, and we continue to do this, but partnering for virtual and in-person events. Anytime we can get together and collectively set up a table, hand out marketing materials or informational materials, let's just let each other know when we're having an event, so that we all maybe can get come and experience it and provide an opportunity for all of us. And the next bucket is MAG. And again, as I mentioned, we would really like to see MAG take the lead on this regional EV infrastructure needs assessment and siting plan, so that individually, we as municipalities, cities, and towns and counties don't have to come up with our own. So there's some economy of scale, and we really think this would be helpful to advancing. And then last but certainly not least is EV equity, is looking for ways to establish equity partnership and projects across municipal lines, and just understanding what Phoenix is doing, what Tempe's doing, or Mesa, or Surprise, or Avondale, in terms of their equity programs, and just learning and sharing the information with each other would be very helpful. So that's Phoenix's kind of program and approach and things that we're working on. Does anybody have any questions on that portion?
Karen, I know Danae had asked earlier with regards to walking through the calculation of number of EVSEs needed based on projections, and Nathan had included a estimator resource in the chat. I don't know if you have anything else to add to Danae's question.
Just that, and I can certainly contact Danae offline too, but what I did is, on the Department of Energy's webpage, on the Alternative Fuels Data Center, there is a calculator on there that if you know how many EVs are currently in your municipality, that you can plug that in and it will spit you out the amount of chargers that you need. I don't know that I would use it as gospel, but it's certainly something to use as a planning tool.
That's the link I put in there. So
okay, thanks, Nathan.
I was trying to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very helpful. And again, I would use it for planning purposes only, to use as kind of a guide. I don't know that I would use it as my final number, but it's the best I have right now. And until we get a consultant or a need study done, or somebody else that can really do the research into the numbers, because again, I'm having a hard time getting the information from ADOT. And I know that EPRI, I think, does it by city and municipality level in terms of the EVs that are registered. So it's just, I don't have access to EPRI data unless the utilities can share it. So yeah, and I'll talk to you about that offline too, Danae. So the next section, I'm sorry, Anne, was that all the questions we had?
Yes, I
Okay.
do believe that took care of all of them.
Okay, and this last bit I want to go through is, being that I've been in the chair for about a year, I've certainly learned a lot of lessons and got some best practices that I wanted to share. And please, by all means, anybody jump in with their best practices and lesson learned as well. But the first thing is EV education to your internal departments. Again, this could be staff education, getting them learned up in why they should buy an EV for their own selves, getting your departments educated on why it's best that they transition their EV fleets. So if I'm going to be the leader, if City of Phoenix is going to be the leader, then to me, I start from my internal support base, educate them, and then we start to be the leader by getting more EVs in our fleet. Then we lead by example. So EV education to our internal departments is key. Getting them understanding of the costs. I was just talking to somebody the other day, letting them know that we've got EVs in our motor pool fleet. They didn't even know it. I'm like, yeah, you can actually check out an EV from our motor pool fleet, drive it, see if you like it, take it to your meetings. And so a lot of education needs to be done in my internal departments, because I need them at the end of the day to be my EV advocates as well. I'm also going to be sending out some kind of a survey to all employees, because I want to know where my EV owners are in my city staff, because I would like to ask them to be my EV advocates and be my messengers of information to their own departments. So leverage your own staff if you've got EV owners in your staff. Next is the EV charging planning. So, and again, I don't have an approach yet, but I'm working on it. But to develop an approach for your fleet, public and workplace charging stations, and determine whether you want those stations on a no cost or a cost to charge. Right now, all of our public chargers are not free. We charge a fee to use our charging stations. So I think we at some point might revisit that. We might not, but it's just something to consider, and get a policy and procedure in place for whether or not you're going to charge people, whether or not you're going to charge employees, and whether or not how you're going to charge your fleet cost-wise. Again, we struggle with the site identification, screening, and electrical panel review. So one of the first things I've learned in the last couple of weeks when I've been doing my site visits for potential EV charging site locations is get with your electrician and open up the panel and see what your panel can accommodate or not accommodate. We've got electrical issues across the board. Some of my panels have room for more breakers, because these dual port chargers take at least 80 amps. And some of our vendors want 100 amps. So you've got to go look at your electrical panels. And I know it's kind of a no-brainer, but open them up, find either your city electrician or hire somebody to give you a panel review. Because what I'm hearing is we need panel upgrades. Our volts are too high, so we need a step down transformer, which every time I hear something, it equates to dollar signs in my head. So electrical panel review is key to knowing what you have and don't have. So develop a list of all your sites and then start working your way through the screening matrix on electricity. Is this public? Is it fleet? Or is it workplace? So that's a starting point on your charging identification. And then let's move into costs. So I've had a big eye opener within the last 2 weeks on working on our SRP rebate program. I've been out with the electricians. I've done 2-day site walks on 21 different sites all across the city, from Maryville all the way down to Pecos Park. When you're considering your cost, it's not just the charging station. And I know it's, again, this might be all no brainer, but these are things that we had a mantra when I was in the aviation department: no surprises. And I bet some of you haven't too. No surprises. So when you're thinking about costs, make sure you're looking at the planning cost if you need to hire a consultant. The design cost, again, could be somebody out of house. Doing all of your electrical upgrades, panel, conduit, wiring, transformers. You might need bollards. You might need tire stops. You need signage. You need striping. Construction and install. Again, you're going to do subsurface digging and trenching. One of the things that came up is a lot of our sites are unpaved in parks. That's great and good, but you need to understand the length of your run from your electrical cabinet to your parking lot. One of my parks is 525 feet long run. That just makes costs go way up because I'm going to need a larger conduit size to run all that wire. So again, keep construction and install costs in mind. Then again, you have your charging equipment cost. Don't forget to budget for your networking fees, because if it's a networked charging station, those I like to call the gift that keeps giving. Those networking fees you're going to have to pay monthly or just pay for them annually. But don't forget to budget them because they're going to be there. And then if there's maintenance fees, sometimes these vendors want you to pay a maintenance fee. And then last but not least, we in the city have an archaeology requirement. Anytime I do any kind of work subsurface, I have to fill out an archaeology form, send it to my city archaeologist, and she lets me know what her guidance is. Am I okay? Do I have to do further study? So I don't know how other cities do that, but that's another cost because that's a general fund department. So I have to provide a cost center number to my city archaeologist. And then I also have to do any kind of environmental analysis. So we have an internal environmental process. So I have to fill out a form showing that I'm not negatively affecting or impacting threatened endangered species, air quality, water, land use, noise, those kinds of things. So again, I don't know what other cities' requirements are, but those are added processes that I have to go through as a City of Phoenix. Again, with the charger installations, we have access to alternative charging contracts. That's not just City of Phoenix, that's any municipality. So for instance, if I wanted to use ChargePoint, I don't have a contract with ChargePoint. And we all know how long it takes to get a contract through our cities. So if you don't have the time to get to ChargePoint that way, you can get to ChargePoint equipment through Sourcewell and through National Car Charging. So again, look for alternative ways and contracts to get your charging equipment purchased. Third, lessons learned goes to EV planning. So first, one of the things that I want to first kick off is I need to identify the list of vehicles that are eligible for replacement. And my public works department, which is Overfleet, has that list. They have what they call a three-strike rule. It's over on mileage, it's over on age, and it's over on maintenance, where it will total itself if you put another dime in that vehicle. So working to understand where my light duty sedans and pickups are for transition, and start to work with those departments to get EVs in those locations. But just remember, if you're going to put EVs in the fleet, you have to have the companion piece of charging stations. I know that goes without saying, but sometimes we're so in a hurry to get EVs in the fleet, and we just have to be mindful that we are putting those charging stations in as well to support them. And then another thing to keep in mind is the Nissan Leaf has a back seat, but you can have the option to have that back seat removed and to treat it sort of like a little SUV or a mini SUV so that you can haul things. And I say this to you because you might have a team like a neighborhood services team that has a pickup truck, but could use a light duty sedan if it could be modified. And then you could get that EV into the fleet a little quicker because pickups are coming, but they're coming out later this year. So be mindful that light duty sedans can be modified for more storage and more haul capability. And again, sometimes pickups is what our fleets need because they've got to get over curbs, they've got to get into the field. So certainly understand how those vehicles are used and see if you can work with them on some alternative options. Again, as I mentioned earlier, accessing the Climate Mayor's Collaborative Purchasing Program. It's if anybody's interested, then go look at www.driveevfleets.org and get some more information. And again, hit me offline, and I'm more than happy to get you some more information or set up another webinar to talk to you about the Collaborative Purchasing Program. It's just another way to get some lower cost for EV charging stations and EVs. And of course, as I mentioned before, leasing options with the Climate Purchasing Program, they have municipal leases that have a dollar buy off. So after 5 years for $1, you own the car. So they can structure any kind of lease deal that's advantageous to your municipality. And again, it's a lower upfront purchase price, and it gets EVs into your fleet a little quicker. And that's all I have for lessons learned. I'm sure I've left out a few, but vote early and vote often. And if I can leave you with one word, it's hopeful. I'm hopeful that this administration will be providing more federal funding to municipalities, and we can work a little harder and faster to get more EVs in our fleet and charging stations, because the funding, we're going to have more funding available to us. And with that, that's all I have.